Economic highlights of 2016. Forecast of Vietnam's economy in 2017.
Hello and welcome to our first edition of BizLine in the Lunar New Year, the year of the rooster. From our BizLine team here in Hanoi, we wish you a happy new year, full of success and prosperity. Let's begin our special edition of BizLine today by reviewing the economic highlights of 2016.
Vietnam integrated further into the world market in 2016, with important free trade agreements being signed or taking effect. On February the 1st, the text of the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement was published, following the announcement of the conclusion of the negotiations. Despite the two sides planning to sign the trade deal in 2016, the signing has still not been carried out. On February the 4th, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, or TPP, was officially signed in Auckland, New Zealand. With the vow of President-elect Donald Trump that the U.S. will withdraw from the TPP, whether it can take effect by 2018 as planned remains unclear. Vietnam, however, confirmed that it would continue its integration process, regardless the fate of the trade pact.
Không tham gia TPP hay là có tham gia TPP thì chúng ta vẫn là một cái nền kinh tế tiếp tục hội nhập sâu rộng vào quốc tế.
In addition, the free trade agreement between Vietnam and the Eurasian Economic Union officially took effect on October the 5th, opening up more opportunities for Vietnamese enterprises to access a larger potential market, with total GDP reaching over $2 trillion.
2016 witnessed Vietnam's continuous efforts in improving the business environment, highlighted by the government's issuance of 2 resolutions to improve business environment and support business operation. In addition, a range of procedures related to tax, customs, or investment were cut and simplified during the past year, helping enterprises save time and reduce costs. Draft amendments of 12 laws on investment and business were also submitted to the National Assembly, aiming to create more favorable conditions for enterprises. Thanks to such efforts, Vietnam experienced a 9-point jump to rank 82nd among the 190 economies in terms of the business environment in 2016, according to the World Bank Doing Business report released in October. Meanwhile, with a better business environment, the country saw a record high of new companies established in 2016 with 111,000.
Vietnam posted a 6.21% GDP growth in 2016, higher than the rates recorded by many developing countries in Asia and Southeast Asia. Foreign currency reserves hit a record $41 billion, while revenues to the state budget met targets. The disbursement of foreign direct investment hit a record $15.8 billion. Export value increased 6.8%, and export surplus reached $2.68 billion, despite losses of 1% and 0.3% loss of GDP caused by natural disasters and the mass fish deaths in the central region, respectively. In 2016, fruit and vegetable exports set a milestone as it exceeded rice exports for the very first time. As of December the 15th, the export turnover of vegetables and fruits reached $2.3 billion, while rice turnover stood at $2.1 billion. This was also the first time the agriculture sector has not grown in the past 30 years since the đổi mới or renovation process. Still, the sector recovered with a growth rate of 1.36%.
Vietnam achieved significant results in 2016 in the divestment process in state-owned companies, although it did not reach the target. According to the Ministry of Finance, as of November, equitization plans of 56 enterprises were approved. Meanwhile, Over 156 million US dollars of state capital were divested, earning an amount of 288.5 million US dollars. A part of the government's determination to boost the divestment process was that it asked the State Capital Investment Corporation, or SCIC, to sell its stake in 10 large enterprises, including Vietnam Milk, Sabeco, and Habeco. On December the 12th, SCIC auctioned a 9% stake comprising 130.63 million shares in Vietnam Milk at the Ho Chi Minh City Stock Exchange. At the end of the session, 5.4 of the 9% stake was sold with a value of nearly 496 million US dollars.
"2016 was a remarkable year for startups, as it was chosen as a national year for startups. According to the General Statistics Office, about 111,000 new enterprises were established in 2016, with a total registered capital of over 39 billion US dollars, up 16.2% in terms of the number of enterprises and over 48% in terms of registered capital against 2015. This was the first time the number of newly established firms has surpassed 100,000. The government in the past year implemented several policies to support the startups. One of them was a project to develop a national ecosystem for startups by 2025. By then, the project aims to add 2,000 startup projects and another 600 startup firms, 100 of which are expected to receive venture capital or get involved in merger and acquisition deals worth some 88 million US dollars. To that end, the government plans to complete the legal system for startups and develop a national e-portal by 2020.
In our previous BizLine episode, we have reviewed the major economic achievements of 2016, what have been accomplished and what need to be improved. In this episode, let's talk about forecasts of the Vietnam's macroeconomy and major trends in 2017. And our guest today is Mr. Phạm Hồng Hải, CEO of HSBC Vietnam. As a close watcher in the banking sector, Mr. Hải will analyze major economic indicators and from there give a forecast of the Vietnam's economy in 2017. But first, let's watch the following clip to have a broader view of the international financial market fluctuations in 2016.
The world economy in 2016 was summarized with one word: uncertainty. The U.S. economy was forecast to have more volatilities when Donald Trump was sworn in as president in Washington, D.C. on January 20th. Brexit, or the United Kingdom leaving the European Union, is expected to have a negative impact on trade relations and investment within the EU. The IMF has warned that with Brexit, the GDP growth rate of the UK would shrink by 0.8% in 2017. The growth of China's economy in 2016 reached 6.7%, according to the National Bureau of Statistics Office of China. This is the lowest level it's been in the past 26 years. According to the World Bank, the global GDP reached 2.6% in 2016, lower than the forecast of 2.9%. World commodity prices will continue to decline in the coming years due to slower growth in China and other developing countries. Recently, trends in the global economy have not been very positive. The leading economies of the world do not really have a clear path for growth momentum, it is said. The global oil price is volatile and unpredictable. All of these factors will have a significant impact on Vietnam's economy.
Thank you very much for joining us in our BizLine program today.
Thank you.
So Vietnam is integrating further and deeper into the global economy, and from the clip we can see that there are many major fluctuations in the global economy. So how do you think these fluctuations will have an impact on the Vietnam's economy in 2017?
2017 will be expected to be another uncertain and volatile year. Obviously, with Trump taking office on 20th of Jan, And there's a lot of policy that he talked during his election campaign. Is still unknown to the market whether and how much he will implement those policies. Trump also talked a lot about trade protection for U.S., protecting U.S. domestic economy as well. U.S. is now among the top 3 trade partner of Vietnam today, and I think obviously how Vietnam export to U.S. in the future will be impacted by Trump policy. The market is expecting Fed will increase the Fed rate high in the future, and also US dollar strengthening in the future as well. So that obviously will create more difficulty for Vietnam going forward. The second major uncertainty for Vietnam for 2017 is the Brexit. Brexit obviously still have a lot uncertain for the market today because people don't know whether it's a hard or soft exit. There's a very high chance that we will have a hard exit for Brexit. But UK is actually not the biggest trade partner for Vietnam today. UK only account for about 2.4% of GDP in terms of export for Vietnam today. But what we concern most is the impact on other EU countries. Because after Brexit, if other major countries also decide to exit EU in the future, it will affect the future of EU and also affect the future of Vietnam export to EU. EU export today account for, I think, a very big proportion of GDP of Vietnam, roughly about 20%. So that will be the major concern as well. Lastly, I would say China. China remains a question mark for the global economy today. Obviously, we don't think that China will have a hard landing in the future. But with China's slowdown, obviously the demand for commodity, demand for goods and products from other countries will be impacted as well. What we believe is that China continue to stick to their stable macro objective. So that will mean that it's very unlikely China will devalue their renminbi like aggressively in the future, which will be the good news for Vietnam.
Some people doubt that with the fluctuations in the global economy, it will cast a pressure on the interest rate and the foreign exchange rate. So what's your opinion about this?
Right now, the market seems to be very excited that after Trump take the office, the US economy will recover, Fed will increase the interest rate in the future, and dollar strengthening. So obviously with that trend, a lot of emerging market currency will face a lot of downward pressure, including VND as well. So our view is that for 2017, probably for the first 6 months of the year, we expect to see some pressure on VND, especially when the regional currency depreciate. And for Vietnam to maintain export competitiveness, Vietnam also need to review the FX policy as well. For interest rate, obviously with Fed increased interest rate in the future, we expect another 2 to 3 hike for this year. The chance for the SBV, the State Bank of Vietnam, to reduce VND interest rate will be more limited than before. The financial market condition for Vietnam will be, I think, more difficult in 2017. So those are the factors we need to watch out very closely.
Do you have any forecast of interest rate in 2017?
I think obviously the central bank has done a very good job so far to reduce interest rate for the past few years. I think for this year, the story will be more about a stable interest rate level, and potentially we might see some small increase of interest rate, just in case if there's a big fluctuation in the local foreign exchange market. Then the central bank might need to consider to increase VND interest rate to make sure to maintain the stability in the FX market.
Vietnam achieved a trade surplus of $2.52 billion in 2016. 72% of Vietnam's exports come from the FDI sector.
Cái thặng dư xuất khẩu của Việt Nam có đạt được hay không là nó sẽ phụ thuộc rất nhiều vào các cái doanh nghiệp FDI và phụ thuộc vào cái thị trường thế giới. Tôi cho rằng là trong năm 2017 thì cũng không có những cái biến động gì lớn ở trong về mặt xuất khẩu của các doanh nghiệp FDI. Ngoại trừ cái vấn đề về nhập khẩu chẳng hạn, thì có thể có những cái thay đổi về cái nguồn cung cho các doanh nghiệp FDI Việt Nam, và có thể từ đó thì nó sẽ dẫn đến cái việc thặng dư thương mại ở Việt Nam có thể thay đổi.
Thị trường hàng hóa toàn cầu năm nay sẽ phục hồi, đặc biệt là các loại hàng nông sản, ví dụ như đậu tương, ngô, lúa mì, lúa gạo hiện nay cũng đang phục hồi tốt, rồi cà phê, cacao, những cái mặt hàng mà chúng ta rất là quen thuộc.
The recovery of the global demand for agro produce will have positive impacts on the export of Vietnam's agro products.
Bức tranh chung kinh tế của Việt Nam năm 2017 thì tôi vẫn nghĩ rằng là nông nghiệp có cái sự phục hồi nhất định, đặc biệt là so với năm 2016 thì chúng ta có những cái bất thuận về mặt thời tiết, thậm chí về mặt giá cả hàng nông sản cũng đã có vấn đề, và nông nghiệp được hy vọng rằng là sẽ có cái sự phục hồi nhất định. Tuy nhiên thì nó cũng vẫn không đóng góp được nhiều cho cái bức tranh chung của nền kinh tế. Chúng ta vẫn nhìn nhận vào khu vực chế tác. Đấy là một cái khu vực mà hiện nay Việt Nam vẫn được đánh giá là có cái lợi thế do vấn đề về lao động giá rẻ, do vấn đề về những cái môi trường kinh doanh hiện nay đã được cải thiện rất nhiều, và chính vì thế mà cái sự tăng trưởng của cái khu vực chế tác nó sẽ kéo theo cái nền kinh tế nó sáng sủa hơn.
According to the Ministry of Industry and Trade, the index of industrial production this year is forecast to increase by 8% compared to 2016. Exports is predicted to increase by 6 to 7%. Trade deficit is forecast to remain below 5%. Total retail sales of goods and services revenue is predicted to increase by 10%.
So what's your take on the trade balance of Vietnam when the USD is getting stronger and the Vietnam dong is devaluating a little bit, and the currencies of other Vietnam's partners in the region are also weakening?
I would say that Vietnam is still in a very good position in terms of trade story. Many investors look at Vietnam as manufacturing hub for the region because of cheap labor costs and because of all the trade agreement we have signed up so far. So we can talk about the EU FTA, we can talk about AEC, we can talk about Korea FTA. Obviously, with the domestic economy recover for last year, and we expect it continue to recover for this year, right? We expect domestic demand will pick up as well. So that might mean that import demand also pick up as well. But if you look at the import activity so far, most of import activities for equipment and material for export, which I think is still a healthy import. So overall, we expect that the trade story for Vietnam in 2017, I think still a very good story.
According to a recent HSBC report, there's an indicator, a trend in the indicator such as the inflation rate and the credit growth is not really good. For example, inflation jumped from 4.1% in October to 4.5% in the same period last year. Meanwhile, strong credit growth can pose a risk of inflation. So what's your take on this?
Obviously, inflation for 2016, I think was the factor of a few reasons. Firstly, we talk about the rising oil price against the very low base of the previous year. So that created an impact on CPI number as well. And also the government adjusted the pricing for education and medical services to be in line with more with the market pricing, which I think is also the good direction as well. So overall, if you take out the impact of those factors, in fact, the core CPI, excluding the impact of oil price and food price, will be less than 2%, which I think is very healthy number for the country. So yes, even though the top line CPI is at 4.7% for last year, but overall I think it's still a very stable inflation environment for the country. So I don't expect that we will see another story of like very high credit growth and then high inflation. I think probably close to the government target, probably about 4% or 4.4%. HSBC forecast is around 4.4%. But overall, I think it's a quite reasonable level for an emerging market. Secondly, I think in terms of credit growth, yes, credit growth was high for last year, reaching like 19%. And in fact, if you look at one of the key characteristic of Vietnam economy so far, over 75% of capital is coming out from the banking sector. So I think we need credit growth to support economic growth for Vietnam. Hopefully, if we can develop the capital market in the future, then yes, we can reduce the reliance on the banking sector going forward. I think what is even more important is that with the credit growth, how can we make sure that we can channel the credit into the right sector, into the productive sector. I think that's critical for Vietnam. So our view is that inflation might not be an issue for 2017. Yes, credit growth we need to monitor very closely to make sure it can be channeled into the right sector for the economy.
So given all of the indicators that you have just analyzed, what's your forecast of Vietnam's GDP growth in 2017?
Yeah. So this year the government set the target at 6.7%, which I think that is a very ambitious target. Our view is that probably Vietnam will hit around 6.4, 6.5% for this year. I think it's still a very good number compared with many other countries in the region who are struggling today. I think the story of growth for Vietnam remains unchanged. Strong FDI inflow into the country, very strong manufacturing for export activity, and also very resilient domestic demand for 2017.
For Vietnam, 2017 will be a period of adjustment and economic renewal through the process of restructuring the economy, institutional reform, and improving the business and investment environment.
The World Bank's latest projection expects 6.3% GDP growth for 2017. And we expect that GDP growth will continue to be driven by export-oriented manufacturing.
Merger and acquisition will boom. The government is determined to accelerate the divestment process from state-owned enterprises. The startup trend will continue to be one of the highlights of the economy.
The second driver of economic growth in 2017 will be sustained and robust domestic demand growth. We see, a growing, increasingly urban middle class, rising wages, still very low inflation, really contribute to positive consumer sentiment, and we expect that consumption growth will continue to fuel performance in service sectors, retail, construction, and real estate sectors.
Can you provide us some insights on the investment trend in 2017?
For a few sectors that will continue to do well for this year, manufacturing, I think it will continue to do really well, especially for manufacturing for export. Logistics, I think it will do well because we need a lot of logistics services to support the manufacturing activity. Right? I think the medical services, education continue to perform well. Retail sales continue to do well as well, given the strong demographic for Vietnam today. Real estate sector will be an interesting sector to watch now, because I think we are reaching the point that it will not be a completely boom year for real estate sector. Some of the sector I think will continue to grow, especially catering for the middle and low income category. But for the very high income category, probably we need to watch out very closely. The State Bank of Vietnam also gives some message or direction to the bank that bank need to watch out for the real estate sector and make sure that we don't repeat the same problem that we faced in the past in terms of non-performing loan.
Crude oil prices offer an impressive recovery in 2016. It stuck at the strong resistance level of $55 to $57 per barrel. The possibility of an increase is low because the OPEC agreement to curb production levels is only valid for 6 months.
Áp lực đi xuống của giá dầu trong năm 2017 là rất cao. Tôi dự báo rằng sau giai đoạn phục hồi ngắn hạn một vài tháng nữa thì chậm nhất là đến tháng 5 hoặc tháng 6 năm nay thì giá dầu sẽ đi xuống. Và mức xuống sâu nhất trong đợt đi xuống này có thể là thủng vùng 26 đô la Mỹ một thùng mà chúng ta đã được chứng kiến cuối năm 2015.
Lowering crude oil prices will create a pressure on Vietnam's state budget's revenue. According to Vietnam Institute for Economic and Policy Research, for every $1 of drop in crude oil prices, on average, the revenues from oil will lower by nearly 1,400 billion Vietnamese đồng.
Sức mạnh đồng đô la Mỹ sẽ vẫn tiếp tục mạnh lên. Xét trong từ nay cho đến năm 2020, đô la Mỹ vẫn có thể mạnh lên so với các đồng tiền chủ chốt khác khoảng trên 8% nữa. Đồng euro thì tiếp tục yếu, biến động của đồng bảng Anh là rất khó lường. Tuy nhiên nếu tính về trung hạn do tác động của Brexit thì đồng bảng Anh sẽ yếu đi, thậm chí có những tính toán rằng đồng bảng Anh có thể xuống xấp xỉ 1.1 so với đồng đô la Mỹ. Rất có thể là đồng yên Nhật trong năm 2017 sẽ có giá trị mạnh hơn là cuối năm ngoái, cuối năm 2016. Và đồng tiền cuối cùng cũng ảnh hưởng đến chúng ta, đặc biệt là cán cân thương mại, đó là đồng nhân dân tệ. Đồng nhân dân tệ thì chúng ta thấy là trong suốt từ cuối năm 2015 cho đến cuối năm 2016 thì PBOC, Ngân hàng Trung ương Trung Quốc liên tục phá giá đồng nhân dân tệ so với cả đồng đô la Mỹ. Mặc dù đang có biến động bất thường là tăng giá đột ngột, nhưng mà về cơ bản thì đồng nhân dân tệ vẫn yếu.
Would you like to send some message to our viewers out there, to investors and people interested in watching the Vietnam's economy in 2017?
We are in a very good position today in terms of the reform journey. The government is very committed to reform, especially for the banking sector, for the SOE, and for the public investment. However, if we look at the future for the country, Vietnam won't be the youngest or won't have a young population in the next 20 years or 30 years. So we will be one of the most fastest aging country in the world by 2040, 2050. So the window for us to reform, the window for us to really restructure the economy, I think is limited. So I think it's very critical for each of us, the business, the government, own focus on reform, making sure that we can improve the efficiency, improve the productivity, and also I think improve the corporate governance, so then it can move Vietnam to the next level.
Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Phạm Hồng Hải, for joining our BizLine program today. And we wish you a happy new year and hope that your company will participate with us in our future programs.
Thank you.
Vietnam's economy in 2017 is projected to grow, with the business sector playing a more important role. From our discussion, we can see that the macroeconomic and monetary policies in Vietnam has to balance multiple goals, including solving the pressure on the exchange rate and interest rate to help boost trade and access for capital for businesses. High public debt and state budget deficit also put pressure on government's spending and investment decisions. However, besides challenges, Vietnam has also have many opportunities. For example, hosting APEC year in 2017 is one of the key activities for Vietnam on promoting comprehensive international integration. We hope that the determination of the government and the more proactive role of the business sector can help sustain growth for Vietnam's economy and make it a more active player in the global economic playing field. And that also wraps up this edition of BizLine. Thank you very much for watching. You can always rewatch our program at vtv4.vn or youtube.com/vtv4go. From our team here in Hanoi, until next time.